Mr. Mayor and members of the council, that I would like to get some of your direction on is with regard to the what you'd like to see happen with the new Plains buildings, if you will. I say new; they're not new, of course, but the legacy Plains buildings and the Livery building. I have a couple recommendations I'd like you to consider. If you can give me direction tonight, that's great. If you'd like to kind of stew over this a little bit and give me direction later, that's fine too. But what I would recommend is, for the Plains buildings in particular, and probably the Livery building as well, that we go ahead and get some engineers in there, architects perhaps, to give you a feel for the feasibility of those buildings continuing in whatever status they need to, if you'd like to retain them as a part of your inventory, or if you'd like to see them transition to the private sector at some point in the future. I think with that information, that'll arm you much more appropriately with regard to where you'd like to go next. Because certainly some of the larger questions that I think would be really helpful for those buildings in particular would be whether or not you'd like to see historic preservation take place at any cost, whether or not you'd like to see parking be expanded in the area, or see what it is that the private sector will offer in terms of uses for those buildings. And so you have some things to consider, you have some directions that potentially you can provide, but I think giving you some data would be helpful to initiate this process, and then you can determine whether or not a public hearing is appropriate and all those kinds of things. So if it pleases the council, my recommendation would be that we get somebody on board to look at those buildings with a little more refined eye to see what's in there and what potentially may be needed for those structures.
This gentleman here, you're thinking, or what?
Possibly, yeah, possibly.
Well,
So,
based on what he's done to his ability, he did a dang good job.
I would agree.
council thoughts on recommendation from city staff? Sean?
I guess I'd like to see them sold with buildings intact to the private sector, personally.
Dallas?
One of the things that somebody suggested to me, which I thought was outlandish until I slept on it, and that was selling it to the tribes, or trading land with the tribes, and then they could put a casino and a hotel there at Pretty Plains legally. Now I know you might laugh, but I remember it happened in Phoenix. I had a house down there, and I'd go by the football field. I kept seeing this big building go up, and nobody knew what it was. Well, what happened is the tribes traded about 200 acres of land, and then called that the reservation, and under federal law on the reservation they can build a casino. And that's a big thriving casino now down there, and everybody of course fought it. They're letting the Indians, and I don't call them Indians anymore, I call them natives. They don't like being called Indians. But this one guy that told me that is a well-heeled guy that owns a lot of big buildings in Wyoming. And he brought that up, so I'm just throwing that out for your consideration as a possibility. It may sound strange and wild, but it might be really good too.
How would you determine which tribe?
There's just two, really. The Arapahoes and the Shoshone. They're the ones that are building the ones up in Riverton.
Chris, and then Bob.
I agree with Sean. I think we should sell them.
I think that's what I said.
I agree.
Bob, and then Amanda.
Yeah, I guess I kind of like the slower approach, because if we go in there and we find out structurally they're all really good, there is some value to historic preservation. And I think the second part of the decision, once we find out from a structural standpoint, if they're capable of being rebuilt and, quote, restored or something like that, then we go to the decision of whether we sell. But I think in order to just one fell swoop sell them without any restrictions on what we want to do some preservation downtown, consistent with the block that it's on, I guess I'd prefer to go with what Carter would like to do.
Sean? Oh, I'm sorry, Amanda. Do you want to say something?
I'll let him go first.
I guess that's kind of where I was going to. I mean, I'd like to see or have somebody go in and look at them first. But ultimately, I'd like to see it sold.
Yeah, ultimately, I want to sell it, but
Right, but yeah.
first step first.
I think that middle section that was constructed in the 70s is useless, but the other more historical areas, I agree. I would like to see if it's sound and then ultimately sell them to the private.
Dallas, and then let's take a.
The one thing I'd want to know before we sell anything is what they're gonna appraise for.
Yeah.
Because my goal would be, I mean, we're in all after 3 million. I'd like to see if we can get at least what we have in it out of it.
So is everybody okay with us doing the investigating to see what it's, the city's gonna look into that, and then, but then we can make that next step?
You want them? Oh, wait.
Go ahead.
Do you have any idea what it'll cost, or?
To get some kind of review like that. I don't have a real good feel for that. And so, Andrew, do you potentially?
2,000,
How much?
2,000 to 3,000 would be my guess.
Did you say 2 to 3? Oh.
So we're okay to give the city forward?
Thank you, thank you. We will do that.
Go ahead, I think you have some more, Carter.
I do. Do we have that? Thank you. All right. Let me hand these around. A part of what I thought would help, you one more, okay, do that. With regard to council's direction about agenda conversations and so forth here in our meeting is pertaining to an agenda review. And so if you take a second to look this over, in preparation for that very last item in the pre-meeting, that'd be great. But if I may ask, oh, you gave me one. There you go. No problem. No,
Is there an extra one? I gave mine away. Don't want Carter to.
if I could have Liz and Craig talk to you a little bit about where we're at with that fencing and buffering ordinance that council directed for your formal consideration pursuant to that fencing discussion that we had several weeks to months ago. At least you can have a status as to where that's at. So if it's okay, Mr. Mayor, I'll have Liz and Craig help us do that. Which you should have copies of at your positions, correct?
Honorable Mayor and members of council, last fall, the appeal on the property on the fence on North Washington Street came before this body, and the woman who constructed the fence against our current municipal code in order to protect her residents from the commercial property immediately to the south. And you instructed staff to go back and look at doing an ordinance to amend the municipal code and to do a change so that we had a little bit more flexibility as a community, and that is what has been placed in front of you. We sent out the memo last week with the information packet to kind of introduce what we had done behind the scenes. And then the actual ordinance Councilman Walsh is looking at right now, it's stamped draft. That is what staff's put together and will be taking to the Planning Commission meeting this Thursday evening. It will then come back to you. But what we've done is to look in fact at allowing for a fence up to 6 feet in height to separate a residential property from a commercial or an industrial or a multi-use complex to actually protect truly the residents from an aesthetic standpoint, but also to just allow some privacy. And so what we've looked at in our text in the actual memo was to look at the ability to have some compatibility between the different uses. And in fact, that's what the citizen had talked a little bit about when she had approached the council and also had approached Planning Commission. So we had stated in this ordinance, at times it is necessary to amend regulations in order to allow flexibility in design reviews of our new and potential projects. And that's what this ordinance goes on to talk about. It talks a little bit about the types of construction that would allow for buffering other than just a fence. So we could see hedgerows and shrubs, but we do look for a 6 foot maximum. Other than that, we can go up to 8 feet all the length of the lot line, but that would require building permits, and we would want to know from a more of a construction standpoint what that would entail. But we feel that we have captured what council is looking for, which is again to allow compatibility between the properties. And again, as of right now, it is slated to go to commission.
Go ahead, Dallas.
One of the things that I hear from people is, and the people on my street, including me, would like to be able to build a 6-foot fence on Poplar because the traffic has gotten heavy and the lights and everything that come through there flash into your house. And the 3 feet and 4 feet fences won't keep that out. So I don't, this wouldn't cover that, would it?
No.
No, but curtains would.
So, those people on the planning committee, go ahead and spend 10,000 on curtains, huh? So, is there some reason we wouldn't just have an ordinance that says that you can build a 6-foot fence as long as it's approved by the planning commission, as opposed to just letting some people do it?
Your
Because
Honor?
now there's a big fence over on Beverly between First and Second. It's probably 10 feet high. That blocks out that kind of traffic from that trailer court there. So there are these fences around that where cars have to come out and get on the street, and there's a big fence, and all these arguments that the old guy that Craig took over for wouldn't even consider. And but I just know sometimes people would like to, when these streets get heavy like that, it's when you start letting them block that out, because it blocks the noise out and everything else. I'd really like to see an ordinance a little more comprehensive that would take care of anybody who wants a higher fence, depending upon if it's compatible with the neighborhood. The other, I think everybody on my street would like to do that, to tell you the truth.
You can respond to that.
Your Honor, we did look at it strictly between the different uses when we wrote this. We are also in paragraph number 2 of our memo very conscious of line of sight. So we do want to make sure, and from a standpoint of also safety, of not trying to see residential areas so that law enforcement would not be able to see issues happening behind it. So we were trying to be conscious of residential fencing, and that is in that second paragraph. But again, this is open for council's direction to us. But based on the case that you heard this fall, we were strictly looking commercial, industrial, multifamily in what we drafted.
I just had a follow-up. Across the street from my house is the baseball park.
Correct.
When the city allowed that baseball park in, they said it'd just be during the day, and then they allowed them to put lights in. So now it's lit up. And then they said that's fine, and now they've allowed them to put a big warehouse up where they can go in, the kids can go into batting practice. So I've had people along my street especially say, with all of that, why can't we put up a wall so it blocks out a lot of the light from the ballpark in the summer and night? And a couple people don't like looking at the big metal industrial building, which they were supposed to put trees in, and so I mentioned that, and then now I see there's some trees, little trees, but it'll take 20 years to do anything with the trees, so that's what I'm hearing.
Okay, Chris and Bob.
Dallas has a valid point. I think that it's gonna take a lot to get something comprehensive like that done. I think we should move ahead with the one Liz has, particularly on the commercial to residential, but the ones you're talking about, in a lot of places that would make sense. And I know the city built that wall on Beverly Street when we moved that street and actually took out a row of houses, and it was probably part of the conditions of the neighborhood. In order for the city to take over that property, we'll put this buffer up.
Bob.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I concur with this recommendation. I agree that's a valid point. One of the things we've run into before with people building high fences from a fire and safety standpoint, getting access to the building from the front is generally important. But this is really consistent with some of the things that P&Z has done in the past. And we had, when we have lots that were sold for one reason or another and became commercial lots, we require now a buffer, as I recall. And so this makes it a little more consistent with that, but it takes the onus, I guess, off of the commercial piece of property and gives the option to the residential property to do it. In the case we had before us here, the owner of the commercial property just said, I don't want to participate. And since it had already been commercial, they weren't obligated to participate. Now, should that property be sold again, it might be another can of worms. But I think this kind of addresses that particular issue, but it really doesn't address the issue you're talking about, I think.
So is everybody okay with us to give thumbs up for moving forward with that? All right, great. Thank you. Anything else?
The agenda review would be the only other thing we have for pre-meeting, if that's all right.
Yep.
As you can see on the grid document, we have mapped out as best we can where we see items coming up and the need for council's direction in several areas as well. The meeting next week in the work session setting is one that we will need some direction on with regard to the PFLAG resolution. You'll recall that's the resolution wherein a group of your citizens are coming forward asking for recognition from you pursuant to a protection from discrimination, so to speak. The way I see the work session happening on the 23rd, from my perspective, would be a discussion among council to reconcile the two versions of this resolution that have been circulated among all of you. One of which that we worked with PFLAG to put together that other communities have used is one version. The other version is a version that members of your group have worked on to consider as an option as well. And so while we don't need formal direction that evening, it would help us to know what you'd like to see come to the floor for formal consideration in a meeting thereafter. And so that to me would be the direction we would look for on the 23rd pursuant to that particular item. As it relates, and I expect that you'll have stakeholders here that night to observe the conversation and to hear the dialogue and so forth. So I would anticipate some folks being here for that.
Three questions. Got Dallas, Amanda, and Charlie.
I would like to see mine considered as well, and I'd like to see mine passed if whatever happens, because it's totally comprehensive, it covers everybody. Theirs doesn't cover everybody. I did send something to one of them saying they didn't even consider Native Americans, which I think need protection. My other thought was, do we have to do this just because somebody requests it? Are we duty bound to deal with these kind of things just because somebody brings them up and hands them to us? And secondly, or finally, is I had another thought about putting the wording of the resolution and adopting it on our website that we apply, because the only binding effect on this is what we decide to do as far as how you run the city and how your hiring practices are. So if that was put, I don't want our citizens confused that it's a law and they have to obey it, because that isn't what this is. This is just something we're saying we think applies to the city the way we run it, and put that on our website, which I agree with. We shouldn't discriminate against anybody for any reason, in my opinion. But I think that passing two resolutions certainly doesn't hurt anything either, which then you have a full resolution that anyone can look at and say this covers everybody on the planet, at least in my own and in the city. That's just my thoughts on it.
Amanda.
I think that given at the state level and both at the local level, we are spending an exorbitant amount of time and money into not only maintaining our youth, but trying to pull them back. And I think that we have to be open to the fact that generations moving forward are a lot more gender and sex fluid than previous generations. And I think that if we are not going to pass this, that is a slap in the face to people that specifically came forward asking for this in part of trying to keep that diversity and that younger generation here, going out and getting over 100 signatures from local businesses indicating that this resolution would be beneficial to more business coming in and economic development. So I think there's so many reasons to be inclusive of that, and I don't understand the need for two. I don't.
Charlie?
I think that it's an important discussion to have. If we do this in the work session next week, however the majority votes, there's a high likelihood that who's ever on the losing end is gonna propose an amendment to change it in the direction they would want it to be. Meaning, I guess what I'm saying is, whatever the discussion happens in the work session, that entire discussion is gonna be replicated on the floor on the 6th. And I'm just wondering what purpose that serves. I think we should have the discussion on the floor in a formal meeting where the stands are packed and we have it out. And if Dallas, if your belief is that we shouldn't have anything, we can just all vote no, or 5 people can vote no, and we won't. My opinion, we should just go ahead, put it on the agenda the way they proposed it to us. If somebody wants to make an amendment, say I want to take these population groups out, they can propose that amendment. And if that amendment wins, then that's what we vote on. And if it loses, we vote on the other. And we just do it all on the 6th.
You're exactly right.
Yeah,
I can agree
I
with that.
agree.
You people are crazy.
Okay,
probably gonna
we've
sit
got,
that day.
we have 5 minutes, and so in the interest of that time,
Now, whether there's a hearing, that's a different matter. That's the other decision we would have to make, is whether we're gonna wanna let the public voice their opinions to us. I think we all know where people stand, and if we wanna give people that sense of empowerment, that they've had a chance to speak to their council about this matter that they're passionate about, I'll sit there till 11 o'clock if that's what everybody wants us to do. I don't know that I'm gonna learn anything new, because I think I understand both sides of this pretty well. But at the same time, I think that's the other decision we would have to make, is are we gonna let the public speak on this matter?
So you're actually proposing we just take it directly to a regular council session?
Yes.
I agree.
I don't have a problem with that.
okay,
Do that.
really quick, Jesse, and then let's move forward and take a thumbs up on it.
I'm
Thank you,
gonna
Mayor.
go
If we're
slam
going
my
to take
head
that
into
approach,
the
which I
floor.
do like discussing it and not, jam-packing one work session, I think it would be important having both resolutions. And the reason that I like
Yeah.
the second resolution is primarily because we need to get to a point where we're teaching our kids, such as me raising my son, that everybody is the same. We're all human beings. So I understand PFLAG coming up and saying they've been marginalized, and I understand seeing some of the issues that they've been a part of. But in order for us to move forward, we got to stop segregating ourselves, and we just need to move forward as one body, one human race. I mean, let's just move instead of segregating ourselves into groups. If we want to be treated as equals, we should treat ourselves as equals first. So I think that's the only reason that I would like to see the second resolution on there, is so that we aren't putting people in certain categories.
Okay, so 2 items on the table right now for thumbs up or down. One is, do we want to take this to the regular council meeting? Okay, and the second one that Jesse just brought up, do we want both resolutions at that to discuss? Okay.
So if it's okay with the council then, Mr. Mayor, we would recommend February 6th as that time.
Let's do it.
That's all right. Okay.
And then co-vote
Yes.
comes out.
Yeah.
I was gonna explain why I proposed that. Why I proposed it was. Not that I'm against theirs, why I proposed it was, Charlie, was because I wanted to see what other people thought of the issue. And I got quite a bit of my constituents that voiced their opinion about that.
That's the discussion we have on the 6th. But I think the question of the public hearing, we should resolve ultimately, whether we think we should.
You want-
I don't have a strong opinion about it, quite frankly, but I think we should decide deliberately.
Yeah,
whether
that was
that's
gonna be another
what
thing
we
I was gonna say, I'm sorry.
Mr. Mayor, I'll be real quick.
Yeah, go, you bet.
Can we put, in place of the resolution that we had on the agenda thing, a discussion on whether resolutions, ordinance changes, all of that should be sponsored by a council person prior to being brought forward?
Can we put that on there?
Oh, heck yeah. Great.
So, we'll take a thumbs up on this. Do we want to make it a public hearing?
No.
Yeah, I kind of.
So what do we got?
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, it's a public hearing.
It is a public hearing?
We beat you.
And to see
I was like this.
very divisive for the community, so I.
But I think if we don't give them the opportunity to speak,
yeah,
they're
they
gonna
get-
feel further marginalized.
Right, I agree.
So,
It's gonna be a long meeting, but
We'll be all right. They've been
You
calling.
gotta be
Can't-
here for the whole.
can't be any
thing,
worse than the
John. You gotta
bikers.
be-
It'd be a long meeting or two.
No,
everyone knows
it
what
will be
most
worse
of them-
than
everyone's problem
smoking,
with
bikers, and guns. I'm just
Combined?
saying.
Oh, Mr.
Yes.
Mayor, I want to propose that we reenact the the smoking ordinance.
I will.
Could we do it that night too?
Let's do it that
Can we
way.
do it at the same meeting? Can we bring us smoking?
Could we please?
Yes, okay.
No, I sat at the wrong seat. Nice, you left that.
Chris is carrying your stuff now.
Yeah, he went to work for me. We will probably want to make an announcement about the change in the work session agenda, because there's a lot of people that'll come next Tuesday, so.
Thank you, Charlie.
That seat isn't working. You come on.
You're calling him nuts, right?
No. I like them on TV.
I couldn't find my script. Sorry about that, folks.
They must be, I don't know, I tried to get it. They're kind of.
I now call the January 16, 2018 regular council meeting to order. Would council members please denote your presence by depressing your yes switch?
All council members are present.
The chair would entertain a motion to, by minute action, excuse no one. There we go. Sorry. See, that's how I'll line up here a little bit. Council meetings are televised and can be viewed on cable channel 192. I'm going to try to follow a tradition here with, I don't see any youngers in here. So do you see anybody? Oh, hey, come on up. You want to come up here, bud? Yeah, come here real quick. I'm going to have you help me do the Pledge of Allegiance. Are you with Big Brothers, Big Sisters too? Are you with Big Brothers, Big Sisters? All right, well, come on up here. I'm going to have you help me with the Pledge of Allegiance, okay? Ready? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
High five.
His name is Carter.
Oh.
Carter, our city manager. Hey, Amanda, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. I'm going to read the proclamation. If you have any words to share, then I'll hand it off to you. Does that sound good?
You'll read first and then?
Yes, yep, yes.
And can I actually have?
Yes, if you, please.
Claim it for us?
Yes, I would love that. All righty. So whereas the citizens of Casper recognize that our success depends on helping every child succeed in school and reach their full potential in life, and realize that young people need a solid foundation of support that will help them become well-educated, confident, and productive citizens. And whereas mentoring is a proven effective strategy that helps children and young adults by matching them with a caring, responsible adult who can provide guidance and direction and build their confidence. And whereas mentors build character, encourage success, boost confidence, lift expectations, and inspire young people to do their best, serving as friends, role models, teachers, and sources of stability and support during a critical time in a child's life. And whereas research shows that mentoring has beneficial and long-term effects on youth by increasing their academic engagement and decreasing the likelihood of substance abuse and other risky behaviors. Whereas mentoring strengthens our city's economic and social well-being by helping young people fulfill their potential while helping maintain healthy families and promoting more vibrant communities. And whereas every day, residents of Casper are making a profound difference in the lives of our young people by serving as mentors, supported by many private and public sector organizations that offer mentoring opportunities for youth. And whereas thousands of Casper children are in need of a caring adult mentor in their lives, and closing this mentoring gap will take more investment, partnerships, and volunteers ready to make a difference in a child's life. Now, therefore, I, Ray Pacheco, Mayor of the City of Casper, Wyoming, do hereby proclaim the month of January 2018 as National Mentoring Month in our community, and use this as an opportunity to raise public awareness of the importance of mentoring and encourage more citizens to help build a brighter future for Casper's youth through mentoring. In witness whereof, I have unhereto set my hand and caused the official seal of the City of Casper, Wyoming, to be affixed this 16th day of January 2018.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor.
Thank you. If they want to come on up. Amanda, do you have anything you want to say, too, about Big Brothers Big Sisters?
I just want to thank City Council and the City of Casper for your continued support of Big Brothers Big Sisters and mentoring in general as a critical component to addressing some of our community's issues. And for all of you serving as councilmen and women, and undoubtedly also mentoring in your personal and professional roles.
And I still owe you guys, actually the mayor owes you guys some time. Yes. Keep me posted. We'll make something fun happen.
Perfect, thank you.
You want a picture?
There we go. There we go.
Thank you.
I've been spending the better part of my life mentoring young people, and it's one of the greatest rewards. And if people, matter of fact, I see one of my former youth that I've worked with for many years, a long time ago, as a youth minister, and it's one of the great rewards of my life that give me purpose, and I continue to do that. And I encourage anybody that wants to do that to be a part of the Big Brothers Big Sisters should do that, as it's highly, highly rewarding. So, Councilman Morgan, do you want to give us a little tee up to this proclamation?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So the next proclamation is the National Day of Racial Healing. So while I was in Charlotte, North Carolina, I went to a communications boot camp, and that was presented or facilitated by Carolyn Sawyer, a former NBC news anchor. And she reached out to people that had partaken in that class as elected officials and city administrators across the country to see if they were interested in taking part in the second annual day honoring racial healing. So the idea behind it, it just seeks to dispel biases and other ideas and help cultivate racial healing in communities across the nation. And some of the issues that council's been speaking about more recently, you start thinking about, you know, what does it mean for equality And what does it mean to be in the equality state, something that we represent, and also having the Constitution of Wyoming, something that we seek to uphold. So when you look to the Wyoming State Constitution, in Article 1, Declaration of Rights, Section 2, equality of all. In their inherent right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, all members of the human race are equal. Section 3 goes on to say, equal political rights, since equality in the enjoyment of natural and civil rights is only made sure through political equality, the laws of this state affecting the political rights and privileges of its citizens shall be without distinction of race, color, sex, or any circumstance or condition whatsoever other than individual incompetency. So I'm honored to present this. I'm thankful that the mayor is happy enough to also take this on and to read the proclamation, and for our community to honor this week of National Week of Racial Healing. So I think it's just important that we live on and put forward that we are the equality state, and this is how we're facilitating that, and hopefully broadcasting that to other people outside of our borders that see this state differently. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilman Morgan. And it is very poignant to do it as well, since yesterday was Martin Luther King Day, which some of us marched yesterday from this council, so I was happy to do that. Whereas we have witnessed racial divisiveness rising in Americans' urban, rural, suburban, and tribal communities today that threatens the very core of this great country's unified front. And whereas, just like those who came before us, it is our duty to provide our citizens, and especially the children of this country, every opportunity to learn, grow, and thrive in nurturing environments that don't violate their safety, dignity, and humanity. And whereas we must all work earnestly to heal the wounds created by racial, ethnic, and religious bias, and build an equitable and just society that we may increase understanding, communication, caring, and respect for one another. And whereas if we all dedicate ourselves to the principles of truth, racial healing, and transformation, we can each help to bring about the necessary changes in thinking and behavior that will propel this great country forward as a unified force, where racial bias will become a thing of the past, and whereas the City of Casper acknowledges the National Day of Racial Healing on Tuesday, January 16, 2018, in conjunction with others throughout the United States of America. Now, therefore, I, Ray Pacheco, Mayor of the City of Casper, do hereby proclaim the week beginning January 15, 2018, as a week of racial healing. And I urge all citizens to promote racial healing, to work together to ensure the best quality of life for every person. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the official seal of the City of Casper, Wyoming to be affixed this 16th day of January 2018. Thank you. Thank you for being patient with that. I think those are three items and proclamations that are deeply important for our community as we remember that. So thank you so much. And thanks, big brothers, big sisters, and leadership, Casper. I now declare the public hearing open for the consideration of the issuance of restaurant liquor license number 37 for 2nd Street Eats, LLC, located on 128 East 2nd Street. Mr. City Attorney, do you have any exhibits?
Yes, Your Honor, I have 4. Exhibit 1 is correspondence from Floor Tremmel to Carter Napier, dated December 26th of 2017. Exhibit 2 is the affidavit of publication in the Star Tribune, dated January 8th, 2018. Exhibit 3 is the affidavit of website publication on the City of Casper website, dated December 26th, 2017. And Exhibit 4 is the liquor license application filed December 5th, 2017.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. this is an opportunity for a new business to receive the privilege, if you will, of serving alcohol at the Second Street Eats, which is the proposed name of the business. You will remember Mr. Jensen. He's the proprietor of the business in question. He is also the proprietor of Charlie T's, as you well know, and so his experience with regard to running a business, and particularly a food business, will serve well with regard to this allocation of a license if council decides to do so.
Thank you. At this time, council will listen to public comment. Public hearing comments are limited to 5 minutes, and no duplication of speakers will be allowed. At this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in favor of the issuance of restaurant liquor license number 37 to please approach the lectern. Those who wish to speak in favor. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. I'm Dwayne Jensen. I go by Dewey, of course. I live at 4297 Coal Creek Road. The Second Street Eats we'll be shutting down Charlie T's basically and just moving over to the new building. We'll have basically the same menus, but it's a bigger building, so I can offer more menu items, more events to go on in the building. There's a stage in there. I plan on having bands. I think it's going to be a good move for us because, like I say, it's a bigger kitchen, and I can do a lot more in the kitchen. So,
great. Any questions for Mr. Jensen? Okay, thank you, sir. Are there any others to speak in favor? Wish to speak in favor? Okay, at this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in opposition to the issuance of restaurant liquor license number 37, please approach the lectern. Those who wish to speak in opposition. Okay, there being no others to speak for or against issuance of restaurant liquor license number 37, I now declare the public hearing closed. The chair would entertain a motion to, by minute action, authorize the issuance of restaurant liquor license number 37.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilman Hopkins, seconded by Councilman Johnson. Discussion. Amendments. Okay, please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passes.
I now declare the public hearing open for the consideration of the transfer of ownership of retail liquor license number 28 from Sunrise Center LLC doing business as Primetime to Caputa's Catery LLC doing business as Sunrise Lanes. Mr. City Attorney, do you have any exhibits?
Yes, Your Honor, I have 4 in this one also. Exhibit number 1 is correspondence from Floor Tremmel to Carter Napier, dated December 26th of 2017. Exhibit 2 is the affidavit of publication in the Star Tribune, dated January 8th of 2018. Exhibit 3 is the affidavit of website publication on the city's website, dated December 5th, 2017. And Exhibit 4 is the liquor license application filed November 27th, 2017.
Right, thank you. Mr. City Manager, report.
Thank you, Your Honor, members of the council. The primary impetus behind this request and change, if you will, is with regard to the changing of the ownership. We have a member of the original, or the current, I should say, ownership organization retiring, and therefore necessitating a change in the ownership information that we have with respect to the issuance of this license. And so pursuant to that change, it is important and requisite that the license be reissued, as it were, under the new ownership.
Great. Thank you. Council will now listen to public comment. Public hearing comments are limited to 5 minutes, and no duplication of speakers will be allowed. At this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in favor of the transfer of retail liquor license number 28 to please approach the lectern. Those who wish to speak in favor. How are you, Mr. Caputa?
I'm doing good. Not very good at this, so.
You're good.
Mr. Mayor and council members, Rob Caputa. I live at 3200 Bella Vista Drive. I'm right off Poplar. So We've been doing it for approximately 10 years, had a clean slate. We run a different kind of business with family-orientated program with Sunrise Lanes and Primetime Restaurant. And basically, my partner retired and wanted to get out of it, and I don't blame him, and dumped it on me, and I'm looking forward to do it for a long time and have a great business strategy and getting forward with it. So we're pretty excited to get it and get it going. So we're changing everything as far as the catering, and we're going to do Capita's Pizza and Wings with the prime time, and keep the Sunrise Lanes the same. And so we're pretty excited to get this rocking.
Any questions? Councilman Johnson.
So you're not parking this license, right? It'll be used immediately?
Oh, yeah.
Any other questions?
And you're gonna keep that chicken sandwich on the menu?
Yes, I will. All you have to do is ask. So, you know, that's the cool thing about it is we have the bowling center, which has a lot of the menu and stuff going on. And so we have a lot of our individual customers that come in and request things, and absolutely.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yep. Any others to speak in favor? Okay, at this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in opposition to the transfer of retail liquor license number 28, please approach the lectern. Those who wish to speak in opposition. There being no others to speak for or against the transfer of retail liquor license number 28, I now declare the public hearing closed. The chair would entertain a motion to, by minute action, authorize the transfer of ownership of retail liquor license number 28.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Powell, seconded by Councilman Walsh. Discussion. Amendments? Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passes.
Please read the consent ordinance on third reading by title only.
An ordinance approving the vacation of a portion of South Forest Drive.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve on third reading the consent ordinance just read.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilman Walsh, seconded by Councilman Johnson. Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
All members voting aye, motion passes.
Please read the consent ordinance on second reading by title only.
An ordinance granting a franchise to Bresnan Communications LLC for the construction and operation of a cable system and repealing ordinance number 7-07.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve on second reading the consent ordinance just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Humphrey, seconded by Councilman Morgan. Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passes.
Please read the ordinance on first reading by title only.
An ordinance amending section 17.12.124 towers of the Casper Municipal Code.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve on first reading the ordinance just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Johnson, seconded by Councilman Hopkins. City Manager.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the council. Council is aware that the landscape for telecommunications is changing rapidly, particularly at the federal level. And so pursuant to that, council did hire River Oaks Communications Corporation to help with the rewriting of the city's ordinance with the aim to better manage those impacts that these regulations would have on our community and still make it viable and feasible for wireless communication companies to perform the services that they perform. With that in mind, council had a presentation not too long ago wherein a representative of River Oaks Communications came forward and discussed with you the details of that ordinance and the changes that are being proposed and so forth. This ordinance in front of you this evening represents those changes and feedback the council provided, and we're asking for your formal consideration in that regard.
Thank you. Any discussion? Councilman Morgan.
Just real quickly, I just hope in passing this, we also look at the rate and franchise fees that we offer to those service providers in hopes that we make it under the, under the market rate in hopes that we can provide a better service to our citizens instead of making it a less inviting environment. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Councilman Powell.
Thank you, Your Honor. It's been a couple months, so my memory may not be as sharp, but just so everyone understands, some of the discussion we had really had to do with the aesthetics of towers in our community, and that by setting some of these standards, state-of-the-art towers would be put in that are much less easily identified as a tower. And so instead of having a big box that looks like a refrigerator on a pole right in the middle of our downtown, these regulations would require companies to install something that would be much smaller and I guess aesthetically pleasing, if I'm remembering all of this correctly. And so without changing some of these regulations, we would not be able to do that. So that was part of the motivation here, was to really encourage state-of-the-art technology, because sometimes the financial incentives aren't quite enough to do that. So just so you all know part of what we're up to here.
Councilman Laird.
The technology has gotten better, and now they can place some of these cell phone towers right on street lights. You've probably seen them but didn't recognize what they were. I didn't tell you, pointed it out. But the other thing, when I was in another town this weekend, they had a big debate in the paper about what the city council was doing as far as charging people like Verizon to put these cell phone towers up, and they were getting $700 per tower down in Vegas, but they said the going rate was $3,400, which is a lot more than what we're getting. So I kind of wanted the city attorney to revisit that at some point as to whether we did get a very good deal or not.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Any amendments? Okay, please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
All members voting aye, motion passes.
Council will now discuss the resolution for the county-wide consensus funds. Because this is not on the consent agenda, it will be open for discussion by council. Please read the resolution by title only.
A resolution approving the proposed project applications for the reallocation of the 2015-2016 county consensus funding.
The chair would entertain a motion to adopt the resolution just read.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Huckabee, seconded by Councilman Johnson. City Manager report.
Thank you, Your Honor, members of the council. You have before you this evening a proposal with regard to an application that subsequently would be filed if indeed council approves what is being proposed this evening. The breakdown of the remaining tranche of funds through the consensus program is in the neighborhood of $1.8 million in value. In that regard, a number of projects have been proposed from the consortium of communities, if you will, along with the county. And that breakdown and proposal is as follows. $500,000 being allocated to the town of Evansville for a connection to Metro Road. $300,000 being proposed to the towns of Midwest and Edgerton for the construction of a water line in their community. $600,000 to the city of Casper with respect to improvements at the event center. $200,000 being proposed for the Public Safety Communications Center with regard to the upgrades of towers located in Alcova, and $200,000 being proposed to the county with regard to improvements that they would like to make at the fairgrounds.
Great. Thank you. This time, Pat Sweeney is asked to speak with us. If you'd please come forward.
Pat Sweeney, 951 North Kimball, and thank you, Mayor, for allowing me to speak. I just want to advocate for the Midwest Edgerton water replacement. This $300,000 is critical. They're due to go in front of the State Loan Investment Board this Thursday. And one of the key components of that ask and grant from the SLIB board is this $300,000. What the project entails, in case it wasn't discussed, is a 1.1 mile of the 20-some mile pipeline. There's no redundancy for Midwest or Edgerton to get their water from the regional water system. And this 1.1 mile has failed over the last couple of years. I think it's a total of 5 or 6 times. And this isn't protected by any of the electronic systems that you can put in place in order to help the corrosion. Also, the soils in this area are very, very poor. And so this is a great need and a sincere ask. You've been kind, I believe, with other consensus monies in the past, way above board. And I know Edgerton in particular, which is within my district, is very appreciative of the consensus funds and appreciative of this situation, and hopefully this passes through. I don't know if in the past there's actually been rules in place or understandings in place as to allocation of these funds, or any guidelines to follow. And so in thought process on all of this, I feel the allocation looks fair, being Casper is the largest community with this, and probably you know, in the scheme of things, obviously with sales tax, the largest collector in the county. With that in mind, I'd also just like to, that's my main reason for coming to talk to you, but I'd just like to urge you also, the fairgrounds improvements don't seem, they seem like a whim. But I can assure you, having sat through some the Racing Commission meetings that were held just a few months ago, and also concerns of the College National Finals Rodeo on the condition of the stalls. The drainage situation on the entire fairgrounds proper is 1 inch, and I think it's below an inch of grade from north to south, east to west. So it's very, very flat. And so what this money would provide, is my understanding, is not only some grading and getting some grade so that the stalls aren't below grade, so that they will drain, but also some improvements within the stalls, within the pathways along. Losing the horse races, which it appears that we have for this 18 racing season, hopefully that economic impact, my hope is we can reapply to the Racing Commission if these improvements are done and get our 18 dates back. Those dates are going to Gillette at this current time.
Okay, your time's up, Mr. Sweeney.
Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Appreciate it.
question.
Oh, sorry. Actually, come back here, Mr. Sweeney. See how it's tough, and then I'm like, oh no, come back. I'm sorry, sir. Go ahead, Mr. Laird.
You're one of our legislators. And so what I'm wondering is, why does the legislature give us this money and then tells us we have to argue with all of our neighbors about the money rather than just assigning the money? Because when you talk about what has to be done out at the fairgrounds, I don't doubt it a bit, but that means that we had to give that money to the county if we choose to do that and not repair the ice arena. So we got all these little kids that play hockey, and that would be terrible if we had to shut down the ice arena. But that's the change. So what do you think of our ice arena? Do you think we should fix that? Or have you looked into that?
Mayor, Councilman Laird, they're all deserving projects, and the whole point of the consensus funding was that in each county, those with municipalities would get together, decide where those funds would be allocated to for worthy projects. And as I'm sure you're aware, there is no more consensus funding because of the budget shortfalls. Hopefully we can get back to a point, because I think it's a great program for all of our communities across the state. But I don't know, honestly, the origin of the consensus funding or the timeline that it's been in existence. But, you know, I think they're all worthy, you know, and obviously the ice arena, you know, I don't have those answers on where else the funds could come from.
Well, I'd be happy to give them to you, but you didn't come and ask us. You came in with this information about the county's money, seemed to know a lot about how we need to treat the animals. I'm wondering how we should treat our kids, because Casper has 70% of the population, but we're for instance with Edgerton, if I calculate it right, they're going to get $3,000 a person out of that consensus money, and Casper's going to get $33 a person out of that consensus money. So there's a lot of unevenness in the way this is being done. But I kind of blame the legislature because they didn't really iron this out. Because I think Edgerton ought to have their water line, but you didn't give us enough money to do all this stuff. And a lot of people haven't gotten money, but then when you come down as a legislator and talk to me about that the fairgrounds need something, I'd like to hear about what we have to cut out for our people here in town that you think might be good for them as well. And if you came to me before the meeting, I would have talked to you about it.
Your Honor, Councilman Laird, number one, I didn't know it was going to get pulled from the consent agenda until about 11:30, quarter to 12. So I didn't know there was an issue. Number two, I am a citizen of Casper besides a legislator. So I'm not trying to get my nose, as you put in a previous meeting, the nose in Casper's business as a legislator. So I didn't set the rules up. Are there any rules on distribution, Councilman?
Well, I think there are some. And I think they're kind of vague, but no, I think you should put your nose into Casper's business, not just the counties. I think your nose is in all the business, and rightfully so. I didn't mean that in a derogatory way. But when I hear you on just this one side of talking about these other towns, and you've left out what Casper really needs, because, you know, I don't think that people ought to dictate to Casper what Casper needs. And that we have been very good over the years, but I don't think a lot of people understand what's happened with this consensus money. But you adequately said, this may be it. So then one little entity can say, no, you don't get it. We got to get a bigger share for the comfort of the animals. We want a bigger share for the comfort of our citizens. But we're you know, I don't know how the vote's going to go. I kind of know, but I just would like, when our legislator comes down, to address not only the county's issues and the out-of-town issues, but the Casper issues, because it makes it look like we're not considering all of that, which we are, but we're elected by Casper people, and so we have to take care of Casper people. But I think our small towns, we have to take care of them as well, and I'm interested in doing that. They need water up in Edgerton, but when you have the money distributed on anything other than a per capita basis, it doesn't work out. And then for the legislator to know that Edgerton needs a $1 million pipeline and only gives them $700,000, they got to get the other $300 somewhere else. I know those folks can't afford that. And so that whole burden gets put on us by the legislature. And all I've suggested is that you guys set the rules and make it easier so, hey, when we get a check, we don't have to argue with anybody about it. If it isn't enough, we can deal with it. But to then put it off on us, where people, the neighbors, are fighting each other over the money, I don't like that. And I know you know it's something new for you. You probably weren't in the legislature when some of these rules were worked in there, but it's something I wish that you would look into and perhaps straighten out for future times.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. So now we have discussion on this item. Any discussion? Councilman or Councilwoman Humphrey.
I think we all know I do feel strongly about this, but in the spirit of consensus funding, which should be unanimous, I stand by my opinion of the fact that we basically had a gentleman's agreement earlier in the year, last year, that kind of got tossed out the window when the fairgrounds issue popped up. And I don't recall hearing anything about the fairgrounds until we basically had the county trump our idea of how we were going to spend Casper's share of the money. For years, we've given up, I think, what Casper's fair share would be in the spirit of compromise for the other communities, recognizing that we do, Mr. Sweeney, you're correct, you know, we're the bigger group. We do get more money in, and so they really do need some of that extra money to accomplish the projects that they want to accomplish. But I do feel violated that we had our project trumped at the very last minute for the benefit of the county, and I don't think that's fair to the citizens of Casper. So down the road, maybe this won't be an issue because there might not be consensus funds ever again. But I think that we need to fight for the citizens of Casper to get the fair share if we do see some of that money come back. So I guess I'm just shouting out to all the other entities to say Casper needs their fair share the next time we see funding like that. And so I'll support it, but I think the process really just, there was a bump in the road at the very end that wasn't fair to Casper.
Councilman Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councilwoman Humphrey that something got derailed in this process, and I don't know that any of us fully understand exactly why. And maybe in the event that this ever comes back, prior to it coming back, we can develop a plan on how to allocate the money. Whether we can come to an agreement on that or not collectively, I don't know. Might be worth something to work on before we ever see it again, and everything's a rerun. So consensus funding will come back, and might not be in the next 10 years, but at some point it will. My concern, now I'm going to support it. It seems to me that our need for the repairs in the chiller system and the ice rink are more critical than the need for the seats. I would just like some consideration given to where the top priorities go. I would like to see that not all of a sudden cause us a big problem because of a failure. Thank you.
Councilman Johnson.
I just want to reiterate what Councilwoman Humphrey and Councilman Laird said, because for years Casper has given up its fair share of this money. For years, Casper hasn't gotten their fair share. So I just wanted to to reiterate what they said. I'm going to support this. I wasn't happy with the process. I wasn't happy with what the county threw at us at the very end, but I think it's only fair that we, as council members, stand up for the citizens of Casper when it comes to something like this.
Councilman Laird.
We're being dictated to completely. And I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fair that the commissioners brought up something new in a meeting that they previously agreed not to do. I wasn't there, so I don't know exactly what was said. I'm relying on what some council members have told me. I don't like setting aside this ice rink thing. I coached there for 15 years, and I know how much the children of this community love playing hockey. I would like to see all these projects funded, but it's an interesting thing. I don't think most of the folks in Casper understand. But if you did it on the basis of a per capita basis, if the money came to us based on how many citizens we have, based on the taxes we pay and all of this, it wouldn't be a question. But we also benefit by nicer facilities out at the fairgrounds, because it's Casper people who go to the fairgrounds and use those facilities. So I understand all of that. I'm just irked because I thought it was a deal, and it's not a deal. And I'm irked because I would have liked to have seen a little more negotiation on the issue. And I'm going to vote no on it just because I don't like the way that it was handled by the county and some of the other towns. But I certainly think they should have their money to do their projects. We just didn't get enough money, and so everybody needs to tighten their belt. I agree with Councilman Walsh. I would rather see the money go for the ice arena than to fix the seats up at the event center. But the event center is like if you have an expensive truck and you need a new drive line, you got to put a drive line on it before it works. And with the event center, these seats that I think were negligently installed, they're just not proper seats. This was done years ago. No one here is responsible for it. But we get these problems put on us from past councils. We got to try to fix them. But the thought of $600,000 and all of this various money that needs to be spent up there, it grinds on me. I lose sleep at night. And I know I'm paid the big money, but of $500 a month, but I still worry tremendously about what happens to our citizens. And so that's how I feel about it.
Thank you. Councilman Morgan.
Thank you, Mayor. It just hasn't been talked about quite yet when we talk about consensus funding for the entire county. The town of Mills is really getting the short end of the stick for this particular agreement, and I think it's just worth noting that their item was removed from the table and the drainage for the fairgrounds was interjected shortly after that.
Councilman Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I'd really like to thank the legislature for doing what they did over the years, and I understand we're a little short of money this year, but the consensus funding before had done a number of good things within the county. The word consensus, I think, has the whole basket. We were supposed to agree. We had some disagreements, but there are processes that we can use. I can recall a number of years ago, one sent maybe 3 through 11. We used to get a committee together of people, how we were going to spend Casper's money. And quite honestly, that worked reasonably well. We tended to reserve a great deal of the money for infrastructure projects, which in fact consensus money can only be used for infrastructure projects. That's all it can be used for. It can't be used for any operational funding. So I thank the legislature for doing what they did over the years. I understand money is short, but we had talked for years about we would like the legislators to give us some flexibility in how we spend some money that they allocate to us. Well, we did so, and maybe we didn't do the best job this time, but we have done so in the past. So, Pat, with your other hat, if it ever shows up again, we'd still like to have it. Thank you.
Councilwoman Huckabee.
I originally agreed to go along with this until I did some digging, and I'm going to change my vote to no tonight because I think that none of us lives in a bubble. You know, we visit Evansville, we go to Mills, we're one big group. And I agree that the point of this is to come together, which was done, and come to a consensus, which was done, and to have one entity make some backhanded deals go through without consenting with other people as is required is not okay with me. And I think that, as was said, Mills losing out on that money, I think that part of our responsibility as the city is not only to go in with the idea of what is ours rightfully, but also to stand up for those other municipalities that may not have the resources that we have. And I just think it was not okay, it was sneaky, and it was divisive.
Councilman Powell.
Thank you, Your Honor. I don't disagree with anything that's been said here. I've also made similar statements in previous meetings. I do agree that the consensus process has typically worked pretty well over the years and allowed us to get some good things done. This is the first time I think there's ever been serious friction. Trying to be as generous as I can be, I think there was a misunderstanding that maybe some of this money could be set aside in case some kind of an emergency came up later. And that's just not allowed within the scope of the rules. And then with respect to Mills, you have to have a specific project. They didn't. And so there are some rules that we have to follow. I think the discussion about the per capita is a good discussion to have. But let's keep in mind that a couple of these projects are pretty critical. Obviously the water line is, and it's sad that we have to do this because a new water line went in 20 years ago. They told them not to use the material they did. They used it anyway and it broke. So that's why we got to fix it. It's sad. It was a regulatory gaffe. But let's also bear in mind that Evansville, ever since it was incorporated, has only had one way in and out of that town. And this is an opportunity to fix that problem once and for all because, you know, there's a disaster that could happen with that railroad line. And if you had someone that needed medical attention or a bunch of people that did, and that train stalled out over that tracks and nobody could get across, it could be a horrible deal. And so it's the right thing to do. I agree that it's unfair to tell a town of 200 people that you got to come up with $300,000 to match a fund and fix a water line, but you know those are the rules. So I'm going to vote for this. I'm not happy with how it all played out, but and I understand that there's been a lot of discussion about the seats and why are you spending money on seats and you know, we are subsidizing the event center and we're trying to get to a place where we don't have to subsidize it, at least not as much. And if that facility is not able to succeed because, as Councilman, I think your analogy was a good one, that there's a serious flaw in it, then we end up being the losers because that subsidy maintains itself and we're not able to knock it down. And so we don't have, in a town of 55,000 people, if you have 5,000 people who say, I'm never going up to the event center again, it's not like there's another 5,000 people that will replace them. It's all the same people. And so we rely upon return business. And we all know that many, many people have gone up there and said, I'm not going back. And that hurts us all. So I wish we didn't have to do it. All of us do, but as I've said publicly before, this is our only opportunity, and I think it's the right thing to do. I think we should have gotten a bigger slice of the pie, but let's be good neighbors and swallow this and move forward.
The only comments that I'll make as a part of the negotiations from the beginning, and it was not easy, but the same sense of the conversations of consensus is something that I try to reiterate in our conversations, that we needed to work together. But in the same sense, I agree with my friends on the council that just spoke that it was a very tough conversation and some things had transpired that were frustrating. And I know I'm using some very light language in that sense, but it was frustrating. And so I think the best bet is for us to try to move forward to this. And if those consensus dollars do come back, like Councilman Walsh had said, that Casper fight for its fair share of that. And we need to be tough with that for the community. So, thank you. Amendments. Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
Council members Huckabee and Laird voting nay. Motion passes.
Thank you. Please read the consent resolutions by title only.
Item 12B1, a resolution approving a Natrona County plat Becker Business Center. Item 12B2, a resolution authorizing a final acceptance certificate with the Wyoming Department of Transportation for the Robertson Road North Pathway. Item 12B3, a resolution authorizing a contract for professional services with ECS Engineers for engineering services for the 2018 Arterials and Collectors Project. Item 12B4, a resolution authorizing a final acceptance certificate with the Wyoming Department of Transportation for the Catsey parking lot repairs. Item 12B5, a resolution authorizing a right-of-way easement with the Casper Humane Society for the McKinley Street Underpass Stormwater Repairs Project. Item 12B7, a resolution authorizing a professional services agreement with the University of Wyoming Cooperative Extension Service. And item 12B7, a resolution authorizing the acceptance of an updated drug and alcohol policy for city employees performing safety-sensitive functions as defined by the United States Federal Transit Administration.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to adopt the consent resolutions just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Hopkins, seconded by Councilman Powell. Any abstentions or nay votes? Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passes.
Thank you. Council will now discuss the minute action for the Civil Service Commissioner appointment. Because this is not on the consent agenda, it will be open for discussion by council. Please read the minute action title.
Appointing Carol Crump to a 3-year term as a Civil Service Commissioner effective February 1st, 2018.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve the minute action agenda item just read.
So move.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Johnson, seconded by Councilman Morgan. City Manager report.
Thank you, Your Honor, members of the council. Recently, a process was undertaken wherein interviews were conducted from interested applicants to appoint a new commissioner in place of Deborah Murky, and I hope I pronounced that correctly. I apologize if I didn't. Sorry.
Morky.
Thank you, Morky. My apologies. It's a confusing last name, yeah. Okay. I'll call her Deborah. I think I got that part right. To fill her vacancy. And the commission did participate, the existing members of the commission did participate in the interviews of the 2 candidates that applied. As a result of that interview process, in concert with Councilman Walsh, who also participated, Mrs. Crump was recommended to fill that vacancy, and is the recommendation we are providing you this evening.
Great, thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to approve the minute action agenda item just read.
So move.
Second.
Moved by Councilman, did I just say that? I did, didn't I? Oh my gosh. That's what I get for writing my notes over here. Discussion. Yeah. Councilman Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was on the selection board with the Civil Service Commission as it was then, the 3 people on that. And we interviewed 2 applicants, the only 2 that came in. And Mrs. Crump has long ties and service to the community here. Many will know her as a reporter. She's participated in basically everything in the city of Casper ever since she's been able to. She's a former councilwoman. She came out on top in the selection process. I didn't communicate that to anybody on the panel because the decision, when we left, we hadn't made a decision, and I forgot about it until just now. So I absolutely supported the decision, and I think she'll be a great addition to the Civil Service Commission.
Councilman Laird.
I took it off consent because I think we ought to change our procedure on this. I feel like I'm a rubber stamp when you just say, put it on consent, and then we just vote, and I like the explanation Councilman just gave us. And I know Carol myself, and I think she's a good appointment. I'm going to vote for her, but what I'd really like to see, so I don't feel like a rubber stamp, is we hear something like Councilman Walsh said, and then the person who wants the position should come here, come up, introduce themselves to us, take a couple minutes, tell us why they want the job, and then I'll feel better about it. But I threw my rubber stamp away when I got on the council. So, but I do know a lot of people, and I could vote for them without that, but I think just like what the public has heard about this lady from a very esteemed council person is acceptable to me, and I trust their judgment. But I would like to see a little change in our procedure, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Vice Mayor, about inviting them here and having them just show up so I can recognize them on the street if I vote for them. I hate voting for somebody and don't even know who they are. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay.
Is that the council phone ringing?
Is it?
It is. That's
I will bet you money it's Carol.
That's God calling.
Do you think it's her? Do you think it was Carol?
It's gonna be Carol.
Oh, she hung up.
Carol, call again.
Councilman Powell. It's never happened.
Yeah, I think that'd be something we could weave into the discussion about boards and committees that we have scheduled for our, did we ever come up with a different name than retreat? For our planning session.
Planning session.
Strategic planning would be much better.
Strategic planning.
Trust fall party.
Yeah. Agreed. There are no amendments. Okay. Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passes.
Thank you. Please read the consent minute action title.
Authorize the purchase of one front-loading sanitation truck body from McNeilius Truck and Manufacturing for use by the Solid Waste Division of the Public Services Department.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent minute action agenda item just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Johnson, seconded by Councilman Walsh. Please cast your vote.
Already up there.
Nope.
I don't have control of it.
Is that not working?
It has to be reset.
Sorry, I don't have control of it.
Yeah, close enough.
There we go.
Oh, there it is. We keep looking at Krista. Do it, Krista. Poor Krista.
Well, I voted the first time.
Please record the vote.
All members voting aye, motion passes.
Thank you. Phones ringing. We don't know who's doing that. I don't know what the heck's going on up here. Now is the time we invite anyone in the audience who wishes to speak with the council to come forward. As stated on the first page of the agenda, we do ask the following. Please state your name and address. Direct all questions and comments to the mayor and only the mayor. No personal attacks on staff or council will be tolerated. Council will not respond to personnel matters. These will be referred to the city manager. Questions posed by the speaker may or may not be responded to by council members. Presentations will be limited to 5 minutes, and the duplication of speakers will not be allowed, nor will there be any time extensions be permitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Pat Sweeney, 951 North Kimball. This is a commercial announcement for Safe Rides. We're having Thankful Thursday out at the Beacon Club on the 25th of January. This is the main and really currently our only fundraiser for Safe Rides. I think last year, we haven't gotten December's numbers, but I think the total rides for last year will be somewhere in the 1,800 mark. This is a totally donation-driven program. And so we would urge folks to come out and support the cause. And again, this is our major fundraiser. And the police department, starting with, I believe, Pagel.
Chief Bagel, yeah.
Got this all going, and Chief Walsh followed through with it and made a number of improvements. So I think it's a great program and well received, well used. And one of many reasons that I think our DUI rates have come down over the years is the awareness of it all, not just because of safe rides, but I do feel it's a contributor and a great thing. So I would urge folks, if you have donations, whether it be a room night, whether it be dry cleaning services.
Oh, he's gone. He's gone.
Edith left, but you can contact me. My cell is 259-2145, and we would appreciate any support. And there used to be a council liaison to Safe Rides and the Alcohol Task Force, and I'm not sure, that may have been not a priority, but Steve Schulte was at our last meeting. This coming meeting is this Thursday, the 18th at 8 o'clock is it the Lean Conference Room over at the Hall of Justice?
Be the Line Conference Room.
Line, thank you.
Probably.
So, thank you. So, thank you, Councilman. And so, that's the spot.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you. Councilman Morgan.
Yeah, just in the comments in regards to the Safe Ride, I do look forward to going to that meeting. When I did attend, I think Hatcher said I was the first council person that he's seen in that meeting. So it's a lot of insightful information in terms of the amount of DUIs that's in the county, how many Safe Rides are taken, and some of the issues of when somebody calls Safe Ride, for instance, and they're at Hogan, well, it's not covered. So it's interesting. Thank you.
Councilman Laird.
How much money do you collect, Pat, every year? And how much do you need?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilman Laird, the need, the fundraising in the past with Safe Rides the first one was tremendous. It was around 26,000. That was due to a match, $5,000 match from Wyoming Financial Insurance. And we were able to take care of that match that night. So that added up to another 10,000. I think our last one was somewhere around 15,000, and that's currently about what we're spending to get folks home safe. The liquor dealers have been strong supporters, as they should be. We try to hit up restaurants because a lot of times the issue, they may get a couple of drinks or a glass of wine or two with dinner, and then, finish the night off dancing at the Beacon Club. So we're trying to get the restaurants involved and got a lot of donations, of food donations, gift cards from that also. And I think one year council gave $2,500, is my recollection. So,
Councilman Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to give everybody a little bit of a background on the financing and the transition of them. Of course, my information is going to be old compared to this year's data. When the program was initiated, the money, donated money, went to Central Wyoming Counseling Center to an account there where it could be dispersed to the taxi cabs. And so it's not restricted to a taxi cab. It's a voucher that the bars hold and maintain on hand. And, you know, when a person is over the limit or feels they're over the limit, or they can be offered it by the establishment themselves, they're offered a ride home. And a lot of the debate at the time was, well, you know, we're enabling drunk drivers. Drunk drivers are killing our citizens. And if we can limit, if we could stop people from having a chance of encountering, or their family encountering a deadly crash on the road by providing that, that's the genesis of it. And if I believe right, I think maybe our best year was $26,000. And at the time that I retired, we might have been dropping into the 17 grand to hand out vouchers. So when I say we, it's not the city of Casper. Well, it is absolutely the city of Casper, collectively, the citizens of Casper, not the city government. City of Casper Council did, I think on 2 occasions, maybe one was a $1,500 and one was a $2,500 donation to the Tipsy Taxi program. And I can't remember the number of rides that were given out. That started to decline as well. DUI arrests started to decline. So did alcohol-involved accidents and alcohol-related accidents. So is it the cure? No, but it's one of the combinations of a cure. And it would not exist, I guarantee you, without the Natrona County liquor dealers spearheading the whole operation. So thanks to your organization, Pat. We appreciate what you've done. And hopefully the Beacon fundraiser is the biggest one that I can, that was the best fundraiser I can remember each year. So,
Councilman Powell.
Thank you, Your Honor. Pat, as long as we have you standing up here, has the pattern continued where the establishments that tend to be high utilizers are also either non-members or provide minor contributions to the funding, and that other establishments that really don't need to utilize the services frequently tend to bear the brunt of the financing?
Thank you, Your Honor. Councilman Powell, I would say the highest users anymore definitely donate the most to the program, including the Alibi. And not to call the Alibi out, but he realizes the value of the program and to his clientele. And he offers, I mean, for one reason or another, those type of establishments have gone away. And so it's a valuable resource, but he goes above and beyond. The other really historical top user probably spent in excess of $2,000 at her own establishment during Thankful Thursday last year in support of the program. Plus, her utilization through staff training has actually decreased. But no, both of those establishments being the users, where we see probably least participation is our chain restaurants and a couple of liquor holders that are huge national chains, one on the west side, one on the east side, out of Bentonville, Arkansas. Could
you be more specific?
Not quite. So, but that really we don't see much, if any, participation, a lot of paperwork. And our restaurant national chains also. Restaurants are tough to get things out of, but I give kudos to Red Lobster. They stepped up immediately. So.
Well, thank you for correcting that misperception on my part.
No,
and I think we should. I'm
right here.
Your perception in the past is absolutely spot on.
Okay, thank you.
And I do thank council efforts, you know, in reminding folks, especially a renewal time.
Councilwoman Huckabee.
So this could help you, or it might totally tank you. I don't know. But Councilwoman Humphrey and I would like to offer ourselves for a win-a-date with the councilwomen. So, I mean, you might have people trying to pay you to get us to go away. But we offer that.
Wow.
I was a failure for Big Brother, Big Sister, though. I didn't get a whole lot of money for them. Like a two for one.
Thank you.
It's not a ringing endorsement.
I will pass that on to our detective John Hatcher. That's our liaison. So.
Oh shoot.
He really likes me, so.
Councilman Laird.
Does the gas light contribute much to it?
At this point, we haven't seen anything yet but the ask has been made, and I've gone to Van Galloway to ask him to check those, even though that's not part of his operations.
Well, we see all the calls to all the bars in town, and I can only say the gas light ought to start contributing. I hope they do.
I think that might help. Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney.
Two for one.
Oh, God love you, Pat. Any others that would like to speak? Mr. Jensen, how are you?
Mr. Mayor, council members, Dwayne Jensen, 4297 Coal Creek Road. I'd like to ask the council to suspend the parking permits again until this issue is resolved. We were told a month ago that no more permits would be issued until the issue was resolved. And I was kind of thinking when you were talking about the consensus deal, we were told one thing and then all of a sudden it came up and got changed on us again. So we felt blindsided by this issue. Like I said, my impression was that there was going to be no more permits until the whole issue is resolved. My thoughts on the food truck is I don't believe that they should be parking downtown, taking up parking spots. Reason being that the parking spots are revenue for the brick and mortar, which basically is built downtown. If the brick and mortars, or if the food trucks put brick and mortars out of business and then they leave, then where's downtown going to be? I mean, I'm not against food trucks, but I believe that there should be a good place for them to do their business and not right in front of a restaurant. I believe it's unfair competition, and the other food truck owners that I've talked to believe the same thing. They tell me their business model is to go to the best place that they can find, they take all the money, and then they go to the next best place that they can find. Well, being I'm in a brick and mortar, I can't just pick up and go to the next best place. I depend on the business that comes downtown. Early in the week, the downtown's slow, and so we don't make a lot of money. Towards the end of the week, when it starts getting a little busier, that's when the food trucks and everybody want to be downtown too. Well, that's the time that we need to make up for the slow times at the beginning of the week. Blocking off parking spots, it doesn't affect just me or a restaurant. It does affect the rest of the businesses downtown. In one way or another, it affects them. I mean, I could go into a big spiel about that, but, you know, as you know, laws are made to keep things fair for everybody. And right now, the only ones that things are being fair for is two people, Frontier and the food trucks. The rest of us are having to basically suffer over it. I've been told that I need to just go talk to the owners of Frontier to try and work this out. I have tried talking to the owners of Frontier, and basically their response is, well, I'm gonna do what I want, and we'll just have to agree to disagree. I don't feel that he is really working with the community, the people on the block that he has his business on. I understand, you know, he's the newest bar, and it is a bar on the block. And I understand he wants to make money, but I don't believe that should be at the expense of the rest of the businesses on the block. Again, like I said, I'm not against food trucks. And what I would like to see is no more permits for parking places unless the streets are closed for a real event where everybody on the block can benefit, not just two people on the block. I think that food trucks should have a place to go, whether it be a lot somewhere or, I mean, they should have a place to go where they can be in competition with each other and not in competition with people like me, and it's unfair competition. And like I say, I'm not the only one that believes that. And if they do park on city property, there should be a fee for it, I believe. And you know, other cities have had to deal with this, and they've come up with rules of food trucks not being able to park a certain distance from restaurants, and they give them their own place to go. And like I say, that's just what I'd like to see is, you know, I'm not trying to put them out of business by any means. I wouldn't want somebody coming in trying to put me out of business, but I kind of feel like that may be what's happening. Give them their place, let them compete against each other and not against people that can't do anything about the competition, I guess. And I'm not against competition. I have a lot of competition down there. It's just I believe this is unfair competition, and that's just what I'd like to see.
Thank you. Any questions, comments for Mr. Jensen? Mr. Morgan.
I just have a question. Sorry about that. Just a quick question, sir. Removing the food truck component, other downtowns, you have almost somewhat of a permanent type structure where they're just standing up almost like a food truck, but it's in an area where you have a much larger sidewalk, for example. So how would you feel about, you know, maybe a guy with a mobile cart selling hot dogs or bratwurst downtown? Would you still have that same sentiment towards that as you do food trucks?
Well, that's city property, and I believe that a business should do their business inside of their building. City property should be for sidewalks and the people using the sidewalks. I believe that their business should be done inside their business.
Okay. It's just going to be interesting on how this year moves forward, especially as we address sidewalk cafes. That's another thing. Then at that point, you could have perhaps a business have almost an outdoor food market right in front of their establishment, and it may not even be tied to their own business.
Well, like I said too, you know, if we close off the streets and we have a real event, food trucks, the other vendors and stuff would be a great addition because there would be a lot of people coming down for this event. So not just two people are going to benefit from it, the whole area will benefit from it.
Right.
It's just how I feel about it.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Huckabee.
I think that this is an issue that we as council have been contacted a lot regarding, both at our meetings and in email. And I think that myself and all of us have really tried to allow staff to do their job and to come up with permitting processes. I think that through the Eclipse Festival, there were several areas identified that were perhaps gaps in our event planning process and permitting process that need to be addressed. And I think that it's only fair to give our staff time to try to do that. Right. And I know they're working hard on it, and hopefully we can get a resolution soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, Councilwoman Humphrey.
Was there ever an opportunity to provide kind of local restaurant services and food maybe to that group? Can you deliver pizza over there?
In the beginning I did. I'd hate to say it, but this issue has become kind of a conflict now. Frontier knows that I don't want the food trucks, and so they're doing a lot of online slander, basically. If I can give you an instance, after some things went down, I decided not to deliver there I had a delivery fee that it was just $1 to Frontier. Well, they had an event and they wanted to use me, so they wrote up a small menu and just went ahead and put free delivery on it. Well, so I honored it, just to, keep the peace. Then what they did is they blocked off parking spots like 6 hours early before their event was even going to start. And they blocked it off 11 o'clock in the morning through my lunch hour, and then after lunch hour, then they took the barricades down again and let people park there again. And I felt it was against me because of everything that was going on. So I told my people, well, there's going to be a delivery charge now. I mean, that's just the way it is. So one of their employees called to have something delivered. My server told them there will be a $1 delivery charge. Okay, fine, no problem. So he takes it over there, and he comes back, and a little while later, I looked online, and my receipt was put online with the delivery charge, with that menu that they had made up for a single event. And of course, she tried to put it off like, oh yeah, businesses make mistakes, but her intention was just to make me look bad. This situation is just getting kind of out of hand down there. And
Councilman Laird.
I came down there once and talked to you. Then I went across the street and talked to them. I talked to 3 or 4 people. My suggestion was you all get together and solve the problem. And I wish that's what you would have done. But apparently you guys couldn't do it. And so now we got to solve it. And I guarantee, and I think I told you this, Dewey, you're not going to like the way we solve it, and they're not going to like the way we solve it. Because what I'm looking at is I'm looking down the middle at how I can do this as my personal vote on allowing people to operate their businesses. Because I'm torn a lot of ways. We have a downtown that was built many, many years ago. And the last remodel of the downtown was in the 70s with that Serpentine Street that everybody thought was really cool and nice and wonderful. And everybody then didn't like it. A lot of people didn't like it. Now they've come to accept it. But it isn't, what was never built with food trucks in mind going down there. And so it's a new innovation. So how do we make our city more vibrant? And I get a lot of people who tell me they like the food trucks. So I'm an entrepreneur, and I have friends that are in the restaurant business. And they all have always said, if you put out the best food, you're going to sell the most. So a lot of times people get competition, they need to amp up their game. Everybody needs to amp up their game. And if you've got the greatest food, I think you sell it in spite of anybody else that's in business. Now, the guy with Frontier, he could have built a kitchen like the Cersei's did. They put millions of dollars in those places. And I think I said one time, if I was them and somebody wanted to park a food truck out in front of my new restaurant that serves food, I wouldn't be too happy. And I wouldn't be too happy if I were you. But then I see customers using that food truck across the street, and they're selling a lot of the products, so they must be putting out a pretty good product. The other thing I don't know is if we're getting sales tax from it. I don't know how that affects it.
on that, you are.
And I don't like the idea of these parking places being held up before the food truck even gets there. I know why they do it, because the food truck gets there and there's people parked in their spot. Well, we can put signs up for that, I suppose. But I know the manager's working pretty hard on this, and personally, I'm going to leave it in his hands. He knows how to manage the city, and he knows how to manage the things that are happening in the city, and sometimes we have to step in when the neighbors can't get along. Because I can tell you, as long as you say all these things, they're not going to be happy, and you're not going to be happy when they say things. And so nobody can if you can't get along, you're not going to solve the problem. And it's just too bad Big Brother has to come in and do it, because the truth is, I don't think there's a member of the council that wants to solve this problem. I think they'd rather you solve the problem.
So in the beginning, we didn't just run to city council. I went ahead and talked to the owners face to face and said, listen, this is not good for, you know, all the businesses on this block. And I just got, well, that's the way it is. I feel he's come in and of course he wants to make money, and he doesn't care if he does it at the expense of other businesses. Your second point, as far as food, when you have a truck sitting right there and all you gotta do is just walk right out the door, it's right there, okay? When I bought Charlie T's, all it was pizza, calzones, and strombolis. Since then, I've put in a soup and salad bar. I've put in new menus, new appetizer, or new menu items, chicken pot pies, stuff like that. So it's not like I'm just trying to sit on my laurels and not improve the business. I'm not just sitting here whining and saying, oh, they're taking all my business, I can't do nothing about it. I am trying to do stuff about it. I also have delivery, so I just feel that taking up these parking spots is affecting everybody in the community in one way or another.
Councilman Powell.
Mr. Johnson, you're aware this is a temporary arrangement that we put in place to give us a little time to examine this more carefully and come up with a more thoughtful policy.
Oh, the permits for after 5 o'clock?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a temporary.
I was just under the impression, I was told that there wouldn't be any more permits until the policies.
We made that decision 2 weeks ago. We have the right and responsibility to make decisions like that.
I understand.
That we're trying to calm this down just temporarily, so that we can have a chance to do some research and try to come up with something that that no one's going to be happy with, but that will be the closest thing we can achieve to a fair arrangement. But this is not a permanent arrangement. It was just an effort to kind of buy some time until we can do something more carefully and thoughtfully.
Thank you, Mr. Jensen.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Good evening.
Hello.
Dale Zimmerly, 3035 Bel Air. I have a couple things I'd like to bring up. Well, I'm not a very formal person, so Jesse, thanks for having that meeting. I'm sorry I'm not calling you councilman or something. And Dallas, I love your TV show. Can I get your autograph sometime?
Absolutely.
Anyway, Amanda, for once, I don't agree with a lot of things you do, but I agreed with you tonight by voting no. It's like people say, well, I don't agree with it, but I'm still going to vote yes. I don't agree with that kind of thinking. If you don't agree with it, vote no. Another question I have, how do you determine who sits where? You mixed everybody up and then...
I was wondering.
Put everybody's name in a jar.
Okay.
They always throw.
And we just start shaking it.
Okay.
No.
And then several times before I brought up the matter of prayer before the meetings. And it's still been on my mind a lot. And I had a good talk a while back with Senator Barrasso, that many of you know. And I asked him about prayer at meetings and stuff. Of course, he's in the United States Senate, and they start every one of those with a prayer by their chaplain. But he also told me that since he's chairman of some committees and he has staff meetings in his office, every one of those that he's on starts with a prayer because he says the prayer. And so I'm asking you, Mr. Mayor, even though this is a weak mayor system and you can't make a lot of rules, you could greet us all with a prayer every meeting. And that's what I'm asking from you. And I think, because I know you're a Christian man, and you pray a lot, and God hears it. And just consider it. And thank you.
Thanks, Dale.
I have a comment.
Mr. Laird has a comment.
I agree with you about the prayer because it has a calming effect for me, and I assume for other people. We do the Pledge of Allegiance of the United States. I guess we wouldn't have to do that either. It'd be cool if we had a chaplain for the council, but everybody has differing religious beliefs, and then there's always this thing that comes back to people thinking there's a separation of church and state, which actually isn't in the Constitution of the United States at all. It was a letter written by a very famous man to some churches who was actually supporting prayer. And I don't think a lot of folks that haven't studied that understand that. But we had a meeting about it, and it was determined that the majority of people, we haven't had to vote on that though since you've been mayor. Maybe we ought to vote on that every year. I don't know. But it's a sticking point, and we have a couple. As you can see, we have sticking points, and so thanks for your comments, though.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Oh.
I'm not sure that have we moved on from the food truck situation?
We're just having an open mic.
Okay, well, I just got off my shift.
Oh, that's all right.
And I was listening online, and there's a few things that I wanted to say that I heard that I'd like to react to, and maybe you guys would like to hear too.
Can we get your name and
Oh yeah, name and address,
Sorry,
please. Yep.
yeah.
No, you're good.
James Andrews, and I am the owner of Smoked and Tender barbecue food trailer. There were a few things that I heard. I did try to sit down, and I was yelled that these are our spots, and I was actually going to cut down my appearance downtown by a lot, and that was not wanted to be talked about at the time. I look at this situation as this is a free market, and I did grow up in America, and I do understand that there is more overhead, because when I sat down with two owners of businesses downtown, they said that it's not fair, and we have more overhead, and these are our spots, and each one of these spots is revenue, and I do understand that. The other thing I understand is in America, you're allowed to choose what type of business that you go into. And whether it has more overhead or less overhead, I have a $600 a month payment on a trailer. I have $200 every 2 weeks in propane. I mean, there are costs that are involved, but instead of comparing apples with apples, which you're not going to be able to, because I understand there's more overhead involved in a brick and mortar, which is why I took my American choice and decided not to go that route for now. I do want to address the parking. I do want to have some sort of a mutual agreement with the businesses around. I in no way am disrespectful ever, and have not said that I'm going to do it at the expense of anybody else. But I do also want to exercise my American right to conduct business. So, and it's my passion. My food is, I'm passionate about barbecue, and I'd like to be able to do it in town. So.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Anybody else? Okay, the next meeting of the City Council will be a special session, which will be an executive session to be held at 4:30 Wednesday, January 17th, tomorrow, in the council meeting room, and the work session to be held at 4:30 p.m. Tuesday, January 23rd, 2018, also in the council's meeting room. The next regular council meeting will be held on 6 p.m. Tuesday, February 6, 2018, in the council chambers. And I forgot to go around the table, so let's do that really quick. So, Councilman Walsh.
Thank you, I have nothing tonight.
Okay. Oh, jeez. That was very
That
dramatic.
caused a lot of anticipation.
It did. Wow. Councilwoman Huckabee.
I would like to encourage everyone to participate in the Women's March this Saturday at 1 p.m. at the corner of Beach and Center for a friendly gathering that's inclusive of everyone.
Thank you.
Beach and Center?
Second.
That's what I meant.
Never the twain shall meet.
Councilman Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple things. We had an OYD advisory committee meeting this week, and we had asked Aaron Clokey to come in and talk to the folks in the OYD committee about the parking study. We had some general discussion about the event policy. We were up on the mountain this weekend at both the cross country and the downhill, and it was amazingly busy. And we thought, well, we didn't downhill, but we did cross country. But going over to the Hogadon Lodge, the parking lot was about as full as I've ever seen it. And I know snow conditions are rough, but everybody that was in the building was just tickled pink with the facilities and how hard they're trying to keep the snow on the ground. So we need to pray for a little snow. The other thing, we're 7 months into our year in terms of taxes, and right now we're actually a little bit ahead where we thought we'd be. And 7 months out of 12, we're at 2.54 million ahead of what our projections were. Now that includes both the distributed 1 cent tax and the special 1 cent tax. So we're in good shape. But I encourage everybody in the room and everybody out there in TV land to spend money because it helps our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Johnson.
I guess the one thing I wanted to talk about tonight was I think we need to reevaluate unfreezing employee wages.
Say that one more time, I'm sorry.
Freezing employee wages. One of our touchstones is public safety, and I don't think we can effectively recruit and retain quality people in our police department or in the city in general. And we know that nationwide there's a shortage in law enforcement. I'm seeing it in the county side, we're seeing it on the city side, and that is another barrier to recruit people. So that's something I want to say.
Great, thank you. Councilman Morgan.
Thank you, Mayor. I talked about a couple of events that I had during the work session. Since this is an actual regular council meeting, I'll just talk about that briefly. I hosted a Pints and Politics event where people, elected officials and also members of the public could go down and talk about the political process. It's also, the idea behind it is to have business professionals have a networking opportunity, and that was hosted at Frontier Brewing. It'll be similar to like what I do with Coffee with the Councilman events. I'll probably be staging those at areas across town just to hit different demographics and where it's more convenient to reach out to people. So I hope that you attend the next one. It was a good turnout. I had 1 representative there, and hopefully more to follow for the next one. Hopefully I'll have better heads up for those elected officials too. Also, I just wanted to talk about future agenda items. I think it would be important to possibly set aside either a special meeting or perhaps a work session so we can really iron out how we're going to have performance reviews for our appointed positions that we have for city council, especially once we get into a position where we have an actual city attorney. I think that's going to be important, and how we move towards either a part-time or full-time municipal judge. I think those steps should be in place for those particular employees. Also, again, thank you, Mayor, for this proclamation. I really appreciate it, and I think that this hopefully will start a trend where we can no longer be more cautious than courageous. Thank you.
Councilwoman Humphrey.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm looking forward to liquor license renewals because I'm going to harp on some of our bar owners. So just throwing that out there for their heads up that I'm going to be pretty critical this year. I think Councilman Johnson is right on the money for employee benefits, so I would echo what he said, that I would support that conversation when we can afford it for sure. So other than that, it's so nice that you're in that seat. Thank you.
You've expended your time limit, sir.
Do I have, do I
You've
have,
used up all your time.
do I have 30 minutes?
For the next 4 meetings.
I just want.
Go ahead, Councilman Laird.
I just want to thank all the citizens who come here. I really appreciate it when the citizens come here and say their piece, because it's their right, and it helps us, and it helps me understand the thinking and how am I going to solve this puzzle that's presented to us. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Your Honor. I attended the Downtown Development Authority meeting, and good news is that the Phase 2 splash pad is still on schedule to be opened in May, which will be a great event for all of us, and I think it'll ramp things up even more downtown. And then I also did get up to Hogadon, and Councilman Hopkins is correct. The atmosphere is very upbeat. There's only one problem. They don't serve chili cheese fries. That's a problem that has to be corrected. So, but that's it for me tonight.
Thank you. Just a few things for me. I just wanted to let everybody know that I had said that I was going to be visiting schools throughout the community to visit and have lunch with students. I chose Lincoln Elementary down in North Casper as my first school to have lunch with, and that'll be Friday at 11:30. So if any council member would like to join me to have lunch, you're more than welcome to, and I'd love to have you do that. And so that'll be my first stop going out and chatting with the kids. What's on the menu? I don't know. I'll find out. Probably chili cheese fries, yeah. Again, I just want to reiterate, coming up on the 1st of February at the Y at 7 will be my second youth town hall meeting that I'll be having and hosting that. I also joined the Vice Mayor and Councilman Morgan at the march yesterday, which was great to participate in that for Martin Luther King Day.
And the mayor did a fine job representing the city, and his remarks were excellent.
Thank you. Just really quick too, we made this change, and we'll get this notice out. Next week we were going to have a work session where we would be discussing the PFLAG resolution. The council decided to move that to the February 6th regular meeting to have a full discussion. Do you want me to hold on a second with that look?
Mr. Mayor, I hate to do this, but indeed, pursuant to the statutes that we're required to follow as it relates to the notice for public hearing,
We have to do that.
we've got to do that. So the 6th will be when we actually announce the date.
Okay.
Or for the public hearing.
Right.
And then the following regular meeting, which would be the later meeting in February.
So that's when it'll be on that one.
You got it.
So strike what I said, not the 6th, but later on. I was taking advice from the Vice Mayor here. No, so it'll be on for them, but we'll get the notice out for that. Perfect, great. And that's all I have, so let me find my script, which I wanted to thank Councilman Walsh for lending me his, so thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Johnson, seconded by Councilman Huckabee. Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
All members voting aye. Motion passes.
Meeting is adjourned. No, I didn't think, actually Charlie goes, he was just like, oh.